Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are happy to be here at this conference and excited to present on Japanese university students and how we worked on improving their confidence and fluency using formative assessment.
My name is James Herbach.
And my name is Kinsella Valies.
And we are both presently working in the Language and Communication Research Center at the University of Shizuoka in Japan. Here's our outline for this presentation. We're going to be focusing on getting all the materials put together for the assessment, implementing the assessment, and then looking at the results. And this is an ongoing project. It was precipitated by feedback from students asking for more chances, more opportunities to use their language skills, particularly their speaking skills in the classroom.
We'd like to go over some of the important phrases from our title. First, tri-sectionality. 3 aspects to strengthen independent learning, such as teaching learning strategies, activating metacognition, and enhancing self-efficacy. Multimodal in the context of our studies means both learning online through an on-demand and Zoom combination, as well as face-to-face on-campus learning. Formative assessment, students are assessed regularly throughout the semester using speaking tasks with 2 main graded tasks so that both instructors and learners can identify points for improvement and work on them. In our previous work with this module, we were able to ascertain that students' fluency was highly affected by the loss of face. At first, in an office face-to-face, then online using videos. Deferment of teacher evaluation and allowing students to practice and produce a task that they are comfortable with showed improvement in confidence and speaking comprehensibility.
And the motivations behind this project. First of all, we wanted to support the students in helping them to develop their speaking abilities. We also wanted to make sure that this assessment would be easy for any instructor to use in any department at the university. So we wanted to make sure that all of the materials were clear and concise.
Our participants in this project, in this module, were first-year students from different departments in our university. That included Department of Pharmacy and Department of Nursing. Each school year consists of 2 times 15-week semesters, starting in April and/or September, October. Our project encompassed the 2nd semester, with participants from 11 groups of students at 29 to 34 students per class, taught by 3 instructors. Of the 3, 2 instructors taught face-to-face classes and 1 did 11 on-demand lessons and 4 live Zoom lessons. Our research questions were as follows, focusing on comprehensibility and confidence. So to what extent does the use of the assessment tool improve comprehensibility? And to what extent does classroom instruction help improve student confidence?
And our project was qualitative in nature, and this included student surveys as well as being quantitative in nature. And this included both the assessment results from the midterm and final exams. It was a classroom-based project, and it was also collaborative in the fact that 3 different instructors were involved. And you can see below some of the details that were important in putting this material together.
The structure of the module in face-to-face classes was divided into clear and concise class instruction, use of textbooks for practice, and test preparation. The online classes introduced the same instructions through on-demand PowerPoint lectures and Zoom practice using example practice materials curated by instructors and students. For example, students were asked to bring in speaking task elements to describe in class. Both modalities included peer and instructor evaluation using a LCRC-created analytic rubric, accompanied by both peer and instructor feedback.
And steps to production. What we needed to do was to create this assessment tool. So we wanted samples for each of the 3 parts of the assessment. We also needed a rubric. It included textbooks and, of course, clear and concise instructions.
The model for both practice and assessment was the Toeic speaking test, a nationally implemented language proficiency test. At the moment, results from the reading and listening are included in course grades at university. Though the Toeic has 5 categories, we selected 3: reading a text aloud, describing a picture, and giving an opinion.
And in the next few slides, you will see actual examples of materials that have been given to students for this assessment. And at the very top, we can see part 1, read a text aloud. The instructions on what students should do are written in both English and Japanese. And at the bottom of the slide, we can see the paragraph that students will be asked to read quietly and then record themselves for their assessment.
The second assessment task is describe a picture. Students have 30 seconds to prepare and then have to speak and describe a picture in 45 seconds. As you can see, it's a bilingual instruction, and the image itself below the students have to use to describe in as much detail as possible.
And part 3, express an opinion. Again, instructions in both English and Japanese. At the bottom of the slide, you can see the statement students will be asked to respond to.
The original rubric was bilingual, but not very descriptive, and made it quite difficult for instructors to objectively grade student fluency. As you can see, the descriptions are quite short. Here is the Japanese version of that original rubric. The revised rubric, again bilingual, was more descriptive and gave students a chance to see for themselves what aspects they had to work on when practicing individually. Here again is the Japanese version of the new revised rubric. So the WorldLink series of textbooks were used in our communicative English courses. We use them for this module by selecting pictures and comprehension or critical thinking questions from the text for practice in class.
And here is an example of materials that were created and given to students. It was in order to give them a kind of a structure to use when preparing for this assessment. So we asked students when reading a text aloud to read at a moderate speed. We also asked them to use punctuation to stress. And we also, very important, asked students to think about stressing words so that they wouldn't sound monotone or robotic.
Again, in-class instructions are important so students can understand the tasks, what is required to be considered fluent and comprehensible. This is another example of what students were told or given as a handout. And this one is about describing a picture.
And following up with this kind of step-by-step structure that students could use when preparing. First, we asked them to think about the place or setting, inside or outside. Second, we asked students to describe the main characters. So, for example, age, height, weight, clothes, colors. The third thing was to describe the actions, what people are doing to use the verb to be. And we also gave students instructions on how to prepare for giving their opinion. There were 4 things we asked students to do. First, was to clearly agree or disagree with the statements. And we can see here an example. We asked students to use words from the original statement. So, I agree that companies should hire more women executives. The second thing we asked students to do when giving their opinion was to give a reason why. And we offered them phrases like, first of all, or second. And finally, we asked students to give an example to support their reasons. And phrases they could use were, for instance, or for example.
After a couple of practice sessions and midterm assessment, we found that students still struggled with items such as remembering to use be when describing actions.
So once again, we gave this remedial handout to students to stress the idea of using the simple present verb tense to be. For example, it is daytime. There are 2 children. He is eating. And both the online and face-to-face classes required students to record videos. And this was multimodal in the fact that some students would send their videos by email, other students were using Flipgrid. And of course, all the materials, the 3 parts of the tests, we gave students a detailed list of instructions for how to respond. They also received a rubric. In the face-to-face classes, one difference was students used the textbooks, examples, questions, and photographs that they could practice with both in groups and independently.
The online group assessments were also videos, but recorded on Flipgrid within a 24-hour time frame. The 4 Zoom sessions were almost exclusively used to pass on tips to students on how to handle each of the 3 tasks. And of course, there was a chance for them to do small group practice focused on peer learning and with instructor monitoring. Students used the rubric to evaluate each other, as did the instructor. Another remedial tip and practice session was held after midterms.
And putting this together, we wanted to make sure that everyone had clear and concise information, both students and teachers. So the schedule, midterm was week 8, the final exam, week 14. And students were also instructed to use time outside of the class to record their videos. Below, you can see more details that students were given. And this slide shows an actual handout that students were given either as a paper handout or online as a Word document. And step by step, it gives all the details of what they should do in order to successfully complete this speaking assessment.
The grading system for the course was evenly distributed, with the speaking assessment making up 40% of the student grade. This module had the same value in all 11 groups.
For this project, we did use one section of the assessment as a baseline, and that was describing a picture. And what we found was the baseline, the midterm, and the final all showed improvements. The remaining 2 aspects, reading a text aloud and giving your own opinion, also showed a rise, both in grades and comprehensibility.
The average grade increased by 2.4%. The assessment tool being, as you have seen, both the instructions and the rubric.
And here we can see the results, the baseline, the midterm, and the final for describing a picture. And we can see that for the face-to-face classes, there is an improvement. However, for the online classes, there is an anomaly, and we can see a slight decrease. Now, this graph might look exaggerated for the baseline and midterm being a -8, but this actually equates to 0.4 out of a total of 5 points. And for the baseline and the final, the -4 equates to 0.2 out of a total of 5 points.
Taking into account the average scored at midterm and at final time, we can see that for reading out loud, the increase is significant both online and face-to-face. Give your own opinion online sees a decrease in grades.
And here we can see information that was received from the pre-course survey. If you look at the very top, I can do it with practice. We can see there is a rather large percentage across the classes that are, this information follows our original feedback from students asking for more time to practice their skills in the class. Most students were feeling they could do it if they had help and support from their instructors.
Pre-course, I can do it with practice scores were all over 66% and up to 88% for online classes, while differences between online groups and face-to-face groups for the I can do it aspect ranged between 12.4 to 17.2% for describing a picture.
And here, if we look at the post-course survey results, we can see that I can do it with practice was almost 90%. So this result shows that giving the students the opportunity to practice in class with their classmates and in front of a teacher helped them in their confidence.
After instruction and assessment, students' confidence was somewhat adjusted. For example, give your own opinion online, I can do it with practice, decreased from 82 to 75%. I can do it increased from 7 to 14.5%. And I can't do it went down from 10.1 to 8%. All quite positive results.
And some information that we discovered through this project was that student willingness to communicate was strongly influenced by a sense of being observed by their instructor. And we also found that having the ability to record by themselves deferred this and helped in their confidence. As a result, 47.2% of students say English is important to their future careers. And 71.9% would recommend this type of a class to other students.
We think it's important to share some of the students' comments that we gathered post-course regarding what they liked about the module and what they learned from collaborating with and evaluating their peers. So one thing, some examples are, one thing I liked, I could talk with my friends by using English. I had a lot of opportunities to speak English, which was part of the goal of this project, this study. Things that they learned from classmates were critical thinking, intonation, not to speak too fast, importance of pronunciation, and facial expression. What interesting results.
And limitations that we discovered. One is, of course, performance anxiety. Any sort of testing situation, students are faced with this idea of performance anxiety and how this reacts or is in consequence to helping to support their confidence. There are also many technical challenges using the internet. Do students have enough broadband strength? Do they have the proper computers or programs? Technology was a big challenge. And another example of a limitation was the rubric. We really felt the rubric wasn't providing enough information to both students and teachers. So this is something we are working on in an ongoing project.
So with the limitations of the current project in mind, we look to the future with the intention of improving this module by redesigning and evaluating the first year's rubric, but also for the second year students, as more extensive responses are expected of the latter after their experience with the current speaking practice module. We also plan to examine the correlation between increase in grades and increase in confidence.
And here are our references. And on behalf of my colleague Kinsella Valies and myself, James Herbach, we would like to thank you for taking the time to view our presentation.
Thank you very much.